Okay. Um, I'm Eva Wetz Maxwell, and this is August, I think, 28th, 2007. We're sitting in the kitchen in Waterman, Illinois, of Dad's apartment, the Garden Apartments. And I'm going to ask him some questions. And I should say I am today 64 years old. I will be next week 65. So, okay, Dad, let's hear you.
Well, my mother named me Louis John Wetz, and that was 91 years ago. And I almost totally dropped the Louis because it just is confusing every time they see it. They want to make it Louis J, which nobody knows, and various combinations. So, to all my friends and relatives, I'm John Wetz.
Okay, Dad, let me start asking you some questions here. What is your earliest memory? What's the first thing you can remember?
I remember 2 or 3 things before I was 5 years old. I remember sitting on my grandfather Pete Larson's lap and pulling his beard, and he was real diplomatic about getting me untangled from the beard, but I was pretty persistent. And sometime in there, approximately that time, maybe a little later, I was in my Aunt Christiana Wetz's apartment in DeKalb, and I knew where I was, but that I was in her apartment. But strange to say, and she served some lunch, but I don't remember what the woman looked like. Another thing I remember about Grandpa Larson was I remember standing on the back porch of the house on Twombly Road where my folks lived and where I was born. And Mother was showing me that Dad and Grandpa Larson were putting the roofing on a new corn crib. And I can still see the 2 of them working there, what I saw. And other than that, I don't remember anything more about it.
That's quite a bit. Now, Grandpa Larson would have been an immigrant from Denmark.
Right.
Yes. And Christiana Wetz was Grandpa Wetz's sister, and she was a school teacher. I think I saw her name in the rural school book.
I sincerely believe that she didn't teach in the country for long, because she's only listed in that book for a couple of years. And I don't know what she did. I think she clerked in a store, but that's just guesswork. I've got nothing to go by. I know my mother, I think it was only 2 years she taught.
Before she got married.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, tell me a little bit about your parents from your early days. What do you remember about them, like when you were a child?
Well, I remember I was real fascinated with Mother. This house on Twombly Road on the little farm that Dad had was relatively new for the time, and had double hung windows which worked like they're supposed to work, so that she could wash all the windows from the inside. And I was fascinated the way that she could put the top sash down and the bottom sash up and get at what she wanted to get at, and she did that. I remember, then I remember more things about that place in the country, Twombly Road. We had neighbors, and the next neighbors to us were the Lawrence Farley family. Mr. Farley was deceased at that time. I don't know what happened to him. And they had at least 2 boys, and I played with them occasionally.
When you think about all the people that you knew as a child, who would you say was a big influence on you, the person that you've become?
I don't know how to answer that question, I don't believe.
I suppose, well, really when you think about it, there's all kinds of, it's always so diverse. Some people have like one person that they just credit for having made the big difference in their life, but I suppose for most of us it's pretty much of a blend. Yeah. Okay, now here's one for you. You went to a one-room country school for elementary school, and you attended high school in Waterman. While you were in high school, the school burned down, but classes continued. Tell a little bit about that and how you helped with transportation.
I started school in fall of 1929, and the school burnt in something like November 1929, and they saved the gymnasium, and we conducted school. There was we had a basic study assembly in the gymnasium, and we had classes. We, as freshmen, had an English class in the library. We had a ag class in the jail. We had a science class in the Methodist church basement. And what would be the other thing that we had? We had a math class on the stage in this gym. And so there's a space between the classrooms. And our transportation, most of these kids, or some of them anyway, had junky old Model T Fords, and that is the way we transported ourselves between classes. It was too far to walk for some of those trips, and the ride was more fun.
And you had a junker car too, didn't you?
Yeah.
One of them was yours, yeah. So, were there any teachers who had a big influence on you that you would want to tell about?
I had a very dedicated English teacher. I can't remember her first name now. To me, she was Miss Colley. And she did everything that she could to teach the people that she was trying to teach, and to teach them a lot of stuff besides the actual printed page. I had this science, I'm saying science, but it was really what I don't know just what I want to call it. But anyway, we were studying electronics and mechanics and whatnot in the church basement, and that was under John K. Rose. Uh, I did maintain a little contact with him for a few years after I got out of there, but he's long since gone.
Never heard of him. Yeah. You and your mother went to the World's Fair in Chicago when you were a teenager. What do you remember about that?
Well, I remember there was where Midway Airport is or was now. They built an island to have a destination for a sky ride that went from one tower to the other, and I can't remember if I rode in that. I don't believe I did. I did go up in the towers, and I was in a year or two later. I think it was the next summer. I took my sister there, and Mother and I spent a lot of our time in science and industry, looking at science and industry. We spent a lot of time there. And otherwise, I don't remember much about that, except that was supposedly a graduation present to me from, I think her name would be Kitty Larson. She was Mother's half-brother's Chinese wife. The half-brother, I know his name, but I can't remember it right now. But he worked for the Dollar Steamship Line and met this girl in port, and she was the daughter of a fairly important Chinese merchant. And I personally found out that she was very aware and very quick, because she took Mother and I out to have a dish of ice cream in one of the ice cream parlors that were popular then. And I was sitting at one side of this little square round table, and she was sitting to my right. And I had that one scoop of ice cream in a slippery glass. And when I went to chip a bit of it off with my spoon, I pushed the ice cream out of the dish onto the floor. Answer that, Max.
Whoops, we were interrupted by the telephone.
Well, I pushed that ball of ice cream out of my dish onto the table, and it bounced and rolled off of the table. And Kitty was sitting there, and by the time it got down to her knee, she had her hand there to catch it and put it back in my dish and didn't say anything.
Good reflexes, huh? I think we have some little trinkets. When Grandma Wetz died, one of the things that somebody gave me are some little Chinese trinkets that she had sent from China when she had gone home, I guess, or something.
Well,
Or just
there
little
were,
bracelet or beads or
yeah, there was
something?
several years that she was sending things that she'd pick up in flea markets and novelty shops that would be interesting and different because they were distinctly Chinese.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Often when I was young, I heard adults expressing regret that you didn't get to go to college because of the depression and all of the things that happened to your family because of that. How would you imagine your life to have been different if you had been able to go?
Yeah, I have thought about that some. Um, there's a lot of things you can do with an education that I don't think I would have wanted to do. I picture myself as I could have been a on-the-job construction engineer or something like that, where I was using what I knew to figure out an easier way to do a lot of very common jobs.
You wouldn't see yourself as being a desk type
No, I
person
don't
or
think so.
a teacher or anything like that. More,
No,
yeah.
no, I don't think so. And maybe I would have squandered a fortune trying to invent something.
Well, you have invented some things without an education too. Um, how did you meet? How did you meet Adra?
I was working at a better job. I was working for the U.S. Steel, and I was able to buy a little better than the junky wore-out Model Ts and A's that I'd been driving, and I had a 1934 Ford Victoria. My sister had a boyfriend, and we did a little nightlife running around, and they introduced me to 3 or 4 girls, all of which I found it desirable to get rid of as soon as I could. And there was a little restaurant in town here, maybe on 2nd Street, I've forgotten, that it was just a small little cafe, and I like to go there and drink a cup of coffee and eat something, and I met Adra there. She was waiting on a table. She had just arrived in town. She was looking for a job, and that's what she found.
And how did you know she was the one for you?
I don't really know. Of course, there's the thing she was. Well, she showed a little interest. That put timid Johnny at rest a little bit, and from there things went really smoothly because I don't think we ever had a serious quarrel. I don't, and I don't think either one of us ever was sorry that we did as we did.
How did you propose? Can you remember that?
I remember doing several rehearsals to myself. But I finally just asked her.
She said yes right off, huh?
Yeah.
All right. Do you have any favorite stories about her or about your life together?
I don't know.
Hmm.
We did so many things together. And all was so commonplace but comfortable that I really don't. It's hard to pick a thing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, what led you to become a beekeeper?
Well, my dad had 3 or 4 hives of bees that he had had since he left the little farm or before, and this bigger farm kept him so busy he really didn't have time to fuss with them. And now we're talking. I'm starting high school, and we're supposed to have a livestock project for as part of the ag course, and I don't have any money to buy an animal, so we decided to. I decided to kind of straighten out Dad's 3, 4 hives of bees and make 2 good ones out of them, and there was a yeah, I think the high point of that adventure is my dad had a 40-acre field of sweet clover that he was growing just to fertilize the ground, and one of those 2 hives of bees made 440 pounds of honey that I took off and sold. I think that's what inspired me to go in the bee business.
Success. If it had been a bad year, you might have taken up something else.
That is right.
Oh. So, as you think back about your life, would you have liked to have been a farmer better than you liked being a beekeeper and all the things you did? I know you kind of started out, farming was what you knew from your life as a kid.
Well, I don't believe that I would. I probably would have been better off today if I could have lived through the last of the Depression and got a little start, because everything has grown in value, and including the products you sell, to such an extent that there's 10 times as much money in it today as there was when I had to decide that.
Okay. We realized that you had hoped to have one of us be a boy. How do you think your life would have been different if you had had a son?
Well, I don't really know, of course, and it would have been different. It would, especially if I was farming. Why, the traditional thing would be to live your life and leave the farm to your son. But so it might, if there had been a son, I might have tried harder to be a farmer.
Yeah. That makes some sense. How How'd you get interested in the steam engines?
Uh, I Well, to begin with, I worked for the Wurlitzer Company a good many years, and a large part of that time I was taking care of steam boilers and steam engines. So I thought I knew something about steam because I had some pretty big machines there that ran on 150 um, psi steam pressure and saturated boiling heat. And somehow I became acquainted with some people that were playing with steam cars, and they, instead of 150 pounds pressure, they were trying to figure out whether they wanted 500, 800, or 1100 psi, and temperatures to go with that. And it intrigued me, and I thought I could do better. Well, that remains to be seen, I guess.
Okay, so what's been your proudest accomplishment with the STEAM projects?
Well, I think the main thing is the thermostat system that I use on these monotube boilers. You know, a monotube boiler turns out about 3 times as much water as steam as the thing would hold in water cold. So you got to have a very, you're running between being too cold and too hot, so that you need a real accurate thermostat, real responsive. And I think I achieved that.
I have a magazine that we discovered when we stopped by here last night. It's the Steam Automobile Bulletin, July-August 2007. And Tom Kimmel had stopped to see Dad and wrote a couple paragraphs about him, and part of it about this thermostat thing that he was just discussing. And then here's just a few little quotes that I'd like to say. John has spent most of his steam career working on small, solid, fuel-fired monotube boiler bump valve projects. He has not had much money to invest in these projects. He has made up for this lack of resources with ingenuity, enthusiasm, and pure genius in some of his design work. His attitude is to make something to see if it works instead of thinking about it a lot and not doing anything. So I thought that was just, and there's more detail about that a person could look up if they wanted to see more about that. Okay, now I want to get to, I think I'm going to turn it. Strain in your family. Do you remember the story about your grandfather back in Germany?
Yes. My dad, Henry Wetz, was told me several times, he stuck by his story, he said that his dad, Marcus Wetz, was a teamster in the Black Forest during the time when they were building large wooden sailing ships. And Marcus's job was to get these mast timbers, when the woodsman got them cut, out to the river so they could float down to where they were building the ship. And his mother lived out out of the mountains and forest on the plain in a little country town, the village, like the villages that the peasants lived in. She lived alone there, and he only got to see her once very occasionally. And one night he woke up about 1 o'clock in the morning, and he'd had a bad dream. He'd gone to Mother's house and knocked, and nobody answered. And he got himself straightened out and decided it was just a dream, and he finally got to sleep about in time to have another dream at 2 o'clock. Same dream. Mother don't answer the door. And at 3 o'clock, he had the same dream, started in, and then it was just like TV had been turned off, the picture went out, and by this time he was very concerned. I don't think he slept the rest of the night. He made up his mind he was going to go see what was going on at Mother's house. And when he got a chance to take a day or two off and get there, the house was locked. He asked a neighbor what happened, and the neighbor said, "Your mother died." He says, "When did she die?" The lady says she died so-and-so night, which was the night he was having the dreams. And she says she was having dreams. She was dreaming. At 1 o'clock, she wanted us to go open the door. Mark was there. At 2 o'clock, she did the same thing. And he says she died at 3 o'clock. And that's the way Dad told the story, and I guess it's real.
And then another story about your own experience with your trap line and the guy who was robbing your traps.
Yes, I was a school kid trapping muskrats in a dredge ditch to make some spending money because there wasn't any money during the Depression. And these muskrats, as a rule, they would. We tried to set the traps so they would swim out into deep water, and the trap would pull them down, and they drowned. And if they managed to stay alive, they might gnaw their foot off and get out of the trap. A great many times it was a front foot that was stopping them. And I started having trouble. I was catching front feet. And the other kids at school, they were telling about so-and-so up the road, nicknamed Deli, that he was stealing their fur. And I thought that was kind of fishy, and my mother's kitchen was a dark, gloomy place, and the kerosene lamps were insufficient to see very good. One evening, she was trying to get supper, and I was leaning against a sink, telling her what I did in school and discussing this business of the missing muskrats. And all of a sudden, I had a vision. I saw a little scrub of swamp willow, I suppose it was, at the edge of the water of a territory like where I was setting traps in this dredge ditch. And the trap was there, and then the animal was there, and then there was a big, a man-sized foot with a overshoe on that had the ball band logo of that make rubber footwear. Came down beside the trap, and then the boot was gone, and there was a foot in my trap. And I went to school the next day, and lo and behold, I've got a schoolmate that's got a brand new pair of boots just like that. So you got to live with these people or do something. I looked in my catalog, and at this time I was selling these muskrat skins for 75 cents or $1 a piece, and thought I was making a lot of money. And for $4.50, I could buy a trap that had jaws that opened up like a big dinner plate, and was supposed to hold a bear. And I ordered that. And I invited my friend that has the ball band overshoes to, I've got it figured out how I'm going to catch Deli. I'm going to set this trap, and I'm going to catch Deli when he goes to steal another muskrat. And I showed him how that thing could bite off a 1x2 just as nice as could be. It'd bite it right off. And I never had any more trouble with that project.
I've been wanting to get this story recorded for a long time. That's great. Okay, so on to other things. You and Mother and all our family were very active in the Grange when we were growing up. How did you get into that, and what did you enjoy about it?
Well, I had a neighbor thought I would enjoy it, and took me.
Who was that?
Mercedes Osborne.
Oh, okay.
And I can't even remember exactly what time in my life it was, but it was when things were pretty fluid. I was probably well, I don't even know where I was working at the time, but it would have been a long time ago.
Yeah, I was thinking, I was probably in, I suppose I was in 3rd or 4th grade when you guys started the Grange, into the Grange.
I believe perhaps we could say that...
It should be about 1950?
No, it's earlier than that.
Is it earlier than that? Okay.
I believe that it would have been more in the 40s.
Okay.
But I can't remember any particulars.
Yeah. Well, you went to Silver Star first.
Yeah.
And then later it was here. Well, here's a few questions about me. What did you think when you first saw me?
When I first saw you?
When you first saw me.
Well, I think I was surprised how big the baby was and how active it was. And there's always that awestruck thing that you really marvel that something like that can grow all by itself to be a person made out of what Mama ate.
Yeah. It's one of life's great miracles, isn't it? If you could do everything all over again, would you raise me differently?
I don't think that I would have done very many things different. I remember, maybe it was a little overdone, but I remember you became interested in matches. And I was getting concerned because you were like matches. You could take a strike anywhere match, and you were getting pretty good at it. And Adra says she's going to get in trouble like those matches. How are we going to stop her? I says, I don't know, but I'll try. And so it happened relatively soon. Eva was playing with some matches, and I was reading the paper. And when she got her match lit, I accidentally, on purpose, pushed my paper out where it caught fire, and it blossomed up in a nice big fire. And that was the end of that.
I would think so. Well, how would you like to be remembered?
I think I probably want to be remembered for my children and possibly what I did with these STEAM projects.
One thing I guess I would just put in here, I've told a few people about yours and my political arguments, and how we just go ahead and just argue away, but neither one of us gets mad, and we never change our mind, but we still do it. And they were saying, that's a really precious thing. Most people can't do that with a family member. And I thought, it is. I think it's a rare and precious thing to be able to really talk and exchange ideas that you disagree on and not get mad.
That's a very important point. And I don't know. You see, the way I see it in politics and religion and I suppose anything else you want to talk about, there's a lot of people unconsciously fall into the habit of thinking they've got to do something to change. They've got to change those opponents' minds. And when you get into religion, they're inclined to kill off the people that don't believe like you do.
So, really what it boils down to is tolerance.
Yeah.
That there's room for your point of view and my point of view in this world, and we can just battle it out and have a little fun with it,
Yeah. And when you go to the polls, vote the way you think.
Vote the way you were going to anyway, probably.
Yeah, vote the way you think, and respect the election laws so that you get a fair sampling of what the people think, and whatever the vote decides, that's what you do.
That's right.
And then, of course, if you don't like that, you can always join another group.
Yeah, and you can.
And that's why there's so many Protestant Christian churches.
Yeah.
And the Arabs have got the same problem.
Yeah, and they aren't always tolerant of each other,
Yeah.
too. Yeah. Well, pulling into the last category here, are there any words of wisdom you'd like to pass along to me or any of the rest of the family?
Read the question again.
Do you have any words of wisdom?
I think not.
Well, I would have one more question for you then. Who was your favorite cat?
My favorite
Cat. Yes.
I'm I'm sure that was Josie.
I thought so. What made Josie special?
I think she was smart. She seemed to have a little extrasensory perception, and she made sense. I know she could count, and I know I got the feeling that she did some thinking. Now, one thing that makes me think that she was an indoor-outdoor cat, as she chose, and we took off and went on a week's vacation, and I had a neighbor engaged to feed the cat, and when I got home, the neighbor said that he never saw the cat, but the dish kept getting empty, so he kept putting stuff in it. And the thing that I noticed was the cat acted kind of touchy, standoffish to both Adria and I. The cat was registering a dissatisfaction somehow. Mm-hmm. And that went on for about a week, 10 days, and then all of a sudden my cat is gone. And it was the fall of the year, and I was looking for this cat, and the farmers were running combines, and I was afraid she'd get combined, and I spoke to 2 or 3 farmers that if they found the carcass of a dead black cat, I wanted to take it home and bury it because I thought it was mine. And at the end of about a week, she came to the door and scratched, opened the door, and here's Josie, and she's got her tail straight up in the air and struts in, and was her old self. She showed me I could go away without telling anybody to.
That's good. Well, anything else you'd like to say on this? Do you have any thing you hoped I'd ask you, or?
I think, well, there was some things in the school era. Like at the time, of course, this don't mean anything, names of roads to people that don't know the territory, but when I started grade school, I was a mile east and a mile south of my school, and I knew the way to Malta by going up University to South Malta Road and into town. I could make that. And at the southwest corner of the town of Malta, just past the bend in the South Malta Road, there was an old shack of a house where my Aunt Grace and Uncle Charlie lived. Charlie was an alcoholic, and they lived there and had 2 girls and 2 boys, I believe. Yeah. And the oldest girl was named Pearl. The next one, the other one was Jenny. And Herbert was the oldest boy, and he was a big man, but very light on his feet. And Charles Chuck was more my age. All those other people were older than I was. And as soon as Grace and Charlie were gone, the house was gone.
What was their last name?
Green.
Green. I wondered if they were green because I
Charlie
remember
Green.
that.
Yeah.
That one. What was his name again?
Herbert.
Herbert. Yeah.
He's a big one.
I'd like to ask a question. When you referred to the restaurant where you met Adra, you said in town. Which town?
That was probably 2nd Street in DeKalb.
Okay.
It was a little place.
We'd always heard it was a 5 and dime.
That was a.
Well, she
worked there.
She worked there. She was working there when I was while I was dating her.
Okay, but that's not where you first met. Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, there was something about that first meeting that I think registered with both of us.
The cash register rang correctly,
Yeah.
and the change came out.
Okay. Well, I think this is probably enough of an interview. Now we'll just hope that it was actually recording.
Well, we haven't wasted any great amount of anything except time.
Except